Life is essentially a strategy game, and it's evident because there's some people that are simply doing better in life. For example, some people might think that it's okay to consume meth and they can work while doing meth, and they quickly lose their job, their relationships, they spiral out of control, and then they say, oh, I'm going to stop, maybe in 6 months, and they just can't. And other people might be like me, who decide not to ever do drugs and just focus mostly on saving to travel the world. And as I've said before, I've been to around 6 continents by like age 30, and which is pretty spectacular since nobody else in my family has done such a thing. But then there's other people who, like Alexi Limitless, who grew up in an environment where it enabled her to do more of what she grew up around, which was travel. Her parents, or at least her mother, owned a travel agency, so she already traveled for a very large part of the countries on planet Earth. And when she decided to cross off all countries off her bucket list, she was able to travel to every country on Earth by like age 21, but she had a jump start. And this also happens to other people that want to do directing or acting. Like, it's easier if your parents are already in it, you have friends or family, maybe your uncles that are in it, that can help you get into the film industry or business of other kinds that is not the film industry, because the film industry is a business. So that is true, but you can also work at it. And I've heard stories of people that decided to, work as teachers, and they still, maxed out their 401k, or at least put some money into their 401k, into a Roth IRA too, or just a 401k. And they did so continuously, and they were smart at managing their finances, and they ended up as millionaires, and the first millionaires in their family. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, you can't be a millionaire unless like you're making $1 million a year, or if you're born into a wealthy family. There's a lot of people that have the strategy of just saving and investing their way to $1 million, or at least acquiring a large amount of money. Also, some things that you don't really control is your IQ. There's a strong correlation between IQ and income, and the more income you earn, the easier it is to save more money. Like, if you're somebody with an IQ of like 80 and you have a part-time job washing dishes, only making maybe $12,000 a year in California, your life is going to be much more harder than if somebody was, an engineer making $100,000 a year living in California. And the person who is making more is more likely to be able to live not only much more comfortably, but save more. I've spoken to people in Bakersfield, like I've said in some other videos, that were making a lot of money. They were the heads of an oil rig, and they ended up with millions of dollars because they were able to make so much money that they could afford to max out their 401k for decades, and they ended up as multi-millionaires. And this was before 2020, and if he still held onto his money, I think the stock market the S&P 500 and the broad market index might have doubled in the last 4 years, and it's possible he might have north of $10 million now if he didn't sell the vast majority of his assets. But it's also possible he might have sold before the stock market tanked in like 2020. So life is a strategy game. When it comes to money, when it comes to the things that you want to do in life, like maybe somebody says, oh, I want to wait until I pay off all my debts to get into university, because university is going to get me even more debt, and then one thing leads to another. They have a family, and then they can't really focus full time on studying, and then they end up not getting that university education, and maybe someone else decides to just apply for all the scholarships as possible as they possibly can get, and somehow they get lucky and they get a full ride. And that's because maybe they also studied hard in school, and they, instead of going into like liberal arts, they go into STEMs. Like, you even see this strategy amongst many university students. Some will go to a state university and major in liberal arts, and another person might major in engineering. And who do you think is going to most likely be earning more 5 years after graduation? It's probably going to be the person in engineering or STEMs. A person with a nursing degree, they might end up with way more. They certainly will end up with way more than somebody with a philosophy degree. And even, let's say there's two people, both of them go into nursing, and 5 years after graduating university, both of them had the same job. Now, both of them might be making the same, But one person might be heavily in debt, while the other nurse might be sitting on a $100,000 investment portfolio with no debt, renting an apartment, an affordable one, and the other person might be, living paycheck to paycheck and in heavy debt. They might have taken a home that is too much for a mortgage, and after they pay all their bills, their mortgage, etc., they literally might only have like a few $100s or $500 left in spending money. Now, the other person who maybe is living in the apartment, or maybe just took out a loan for a small apartment or a small studio to purchase it, and after spending money on bills, they might end up having, let's say, $5,000 left over, $6,000 left over after paying their bills. And this person decides, I'm going to save most of that money. And instead of going to like Norway and Switzerland for vacation, the smart one decides to just go to Spain or Mexico or Thailand or the Philippines, cheaper countries, and not stay in resorts. And the other one, the nurse that is heavily in debt and like suffocating with a mortgage, decides to go to Switzerland, go to Zurich and Lucerne for a couple of weeks and staying in resorts, going even into more debt, or just not utilizing the money that they might have saved to something smarter like paying off their debts. One has a different strategy to money, and let's say 30 years down the line, both of them are in their 50s or early 60s. One might have a net worth of, let's say, $5 million, really intelligent, and the other one might have maybe a net worth of like $1 million or way less, or maybe they ended up losing the house and just fell into addiction because the nurse that couldn't manage their money ended up with like an addiction to Xanax, and that led to them getting fired because they were always high on the job because they couldn't cope. Well, one person has a better strategy. For example, I know people within my family who I know this one person. He decided to, instead of working like a regular job, he decided to go in business with himself. He decided to, even though English isn't his first language and he doesn't have a university education or high school education for that matter, he decided to go in business with himself and save his money. And instead of investing it in cryptocurrency like someone in his immediate family wanted to, perhaps have his family invest in, or not really invest in, but it's gambling. This person that didn't even graduate high school, didn't even attend it, ended up way better off years later. So basically, this person that didn't even attend high school ended up starting his own business and doing so well that he was able to buy vehicles in cash, like new vehicles in cash, and is able to live, that typical upper middle class lifestyle, like almost like a borderline typical Costco member, because the average Costco member is an upper middle class person making like $100,000 a year or something like that, except without the university education. So basically, this person goes on vacations to the Caribbean now and has a surplus of cash in comparison to the one guy who decided to go to college and graduate high school, but went to college, dropped out, and decided to get a regular job. Let's just say it's kind of like a forklift operating job. It requires a license that is easily acquired, and decided to, instead of saving his money and putting it aside in cash or into a business or into a Roth IRA or an index fund or in mostly precious metals, he decided to put most of his money for 10 years in cryptocurrencies, and he did well one year, making like $20,000-$40,000. But over the 10 years, he ended up underperforming cash because he lost so much money that he put into the market, and instead of copying another relative of his who was investing mostly in Roth IRAs, retirement accounts. And this person that was investing in retirement accounts ended up in a way better position, taking like vacations to the Caribbean and resorts and not going broke and being able to purchase vehicles in cash, because he just ended up decided to do something similar in profession as the person who invested in crypto. But both of them decided to manage their money differently, and the crypto gambler basically ended up performing terribly, just terribly, ending up in debt, negative net worth. Both of them were about the same age. They both decided to handle their situation in life differently. One is financially free, and the other is in debt, broke, possibly having other problems aside from gambling. It turned into an addiction, gambling addiction. And he won't stop putting money in crypto. I believe around last month he's heavily in debt. He has a negative net worth, but instead of putting his money to pay off his debts as quickly as possible, like Dave Ramsey would suggest, he decided to put that money into cryptocurrencies, smaller cryptocurrencies, not one of the big ones like Bitcoin or Ethereum. And I believe he lost around 20 to maybe even 40% of whatever an appreciation in the investments. I think he put like 2,000 right now. That 2,000 might be worth like $1,200, $1,400 or something like that. But basically, he's lived his life the way a child would live his life. Always doing things that will be gratifying him instantly instead of like delaying gratification. Like he wants things now. Ironically ended up biting him in his ass, because now he's heavily indebted, broke, gambling addiction, and instead of managing his stress, like the average person by just maybe watching a movie, exercising or eating right, he decided to use substances. So he now has a substance abuse disorder. So going on another example, there is a woman that I know that is making well into the six figures, but she's living way above her means. She maxes out her credit cards. She has a lot of things, but a lot of those things are owned by banks. She took out a loan. She's got a couple of really, really nice cars, but she's suffocating in her bills. And she is about 50 something, and she's been earning really well for like 10 years or 15 years. Her house is not entirely paid for. She bought a house that is too expensive. And even then, she is probably going to be in debt for potentially the rest of her life or until her 60s. But let's say she manages to somehow get rid of her habit, which probably won't happen. She manages to pay off all her debts by the time she's like 60. She has $1 million or $2 million home. Well, who do you think is going to be better off? The person who was in a similar position, making something similar, and decided to, instead of focusing on buying things they don't need, they only bought things for the most part that they do need, and occasionally it did splurge, but for the most part focused mostly on saving, and their biggest annual expense was perhaps, vacation. And since they're not in debt, they might end up enjoying the vacation more, knowing that they don't have any debt and having a surplus of cash. And maybe they also manage their investments intelligently. They end up, let's say, at 65 with an $8 million net worth and a house that's worth like $500,000 or so, and it's all paid off. But they decided not to take out a loan on a house that they didn't need, an 8-bedroom house. They didn't need that. They only needed like a 3-bedroom house. And the other one, that the other person who had $1 million house or a $2 million house that was worth around that by the time they retired, and they were suffocating with payments throughout their career, that house had 8 bedrooms, 10 bedrooms, 12. It doesn't matter. It's more bedrooms than you actually need. Like the person who decided to manage their expenses differently ended up expenses intelligently, obviously ends up better. So just because you have the same job as someone else that appears to earn a lot and does earn a lot, doesn't mean that person is doing better. I remember working in a clinic once, and I overheard conversations. There was like 50 employees there, and I would eat in the break room, and some employees were healthier than others. One nurse was massively overweight, while another nurse focused on taking care of herself, and they're both the same age, except the nurse that took care of herself, she was fit, she was apparently happier, and the overweight nurse was also heavily in debt, and I overheard her crying that she was heavily in debt. And the thing is that if you're massively overweight, you can't manage your diet. It also signifies that you can't manage other things, I think, Like somebody that is just they can't manage their emotions. They overeat. They also can't manage their money, because people that tend to be overweight from I have an uncle with a doctorate in the sciences, and his educated opinion was that people that are overweight can't manage their emotions. And Warren Buffett once said that if you can't manage your emotions, you can't handle your money. So a person who can't manage their emotions also can't manage their money. They can't probably also manage time. They tend to be very disorganized people. Now, the best time in my life where I was managing my life the best was when I was 24. In my early 20s, 23. I weighed 158. I'm pretty tall for a Hispanic man. So I was really thin. I had a paid for car. I had my own apartment, and I was saving like crazy. But eventually, I was no longer able to manage, or I just stopped managing things like that because I got lazy. But even then, I can still manage my life better than some other people that I know who are literally in the same profession that I have, and they're in really bad shape. But I could be worse. I'm in worse shape than other people that I know that are also in my profession. I know this woman. She's about 10 years older than me. She has been working in the same profession for about 20 years, and she has a paid-for truck, really nice truck, and she has a house, and she's built equity in the house, and she's married. She has kids, so she has a family. She owns a home. She has better wheels than I do. So she's potentially managing her life better than mine, but I'm also managing my life relatively, well compared to a lot of other people I know. Like, I'm not rich. I might have a few $100s in my bank account at any given moment. It doesn't really go below a few $100s, and other people have way less. Like they have like $10 after paying their bills, or $20 because they're spending their money like idiots. I remember somebody once told me, like, Josh, I wish I was like you. You always have like $400, $500, $600, $800 in your checking and savings account at any given moment after you spend your money on all sorts of things. I could be doing better. I mean, I could have thousands of dollars in my checking and savings account. And at one point I did when I was a very young man. I was like 23, 24, maybe even 22. It's been such a long time. At that time, I remember I would have like 5,000 in my checking and like 8 or 10,000 at any given moment in my savings. So sometimes vice versa. It was like, no, I don't remember. I just know that there was a shit ton of money for someone of that age. There was like 5, 8, 10,000 in each of those accounts, and it felt great. But eventually got into the hobby, as you already have heard earlier, of traveling. And I've been to Zurich, Iceland, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, and I've been to Europe many times, and it's not cheap, especially. I mean, since whenever I go, I splurge like crazy, and the most I ever spent on a trip was $30,000. I worked like crazy. I worked like 6-7 days a week, like week after week after week for a year, saving most of my money. And that is something I won't ever do again. I probably will never save $20,000-$30,000 in a year again. But that was crazy what I did. Like, at the same time, another person in my family that was in the same profession as I was at that time decided still at that time to put his money in crypto, and he lost it all. And I ended up with more money because I decided to just put it in my checking account and saving accounts. I have more. Eventually, I opened more than one saving account. So whenever I travel, I splurge like crazy. And this person that's a gambler has always been saying in crypto, he's always been saying that he's gonna travel. At one point, he had almost $100,000 that his crypto went up to, but it then crashed down to like 40 grand. And he cashed out half of it, so he ended up splurging $20,000 on all sorts of things he did not need. And it's okay to splurge on some, but you shouldn't waste all of your money. So yeah, and he decided to just keep on putting money in crypto. But he always said, whenever I whenever I have a certain amount, I'm gonna travel. And then he ends up having even more amounts than almost in appreciation than other people that I know that travel. But this person that gambles in crypto, like, he rarely would sell whenever it would go in the green, and eventually it would go to red. And most of the time, from my understanding, he would sell during red. So he's only really profited $20,000 in like 8 years or 10 years investing in crypto. And I told him, like, if you were to have maxed out your 401k right now, you'd be sitting on like $150,000 or $200,000, depending on what you put your money in. And well, the most he's ever had was like $66,000 in assets in crypto, but that went down to like 40,000. So he's only made 20 grand in profit and actual long-term appreciation in 10 years. Meanwhile, if he were to put it in his 401k, he would have ended up really, really well. Like right now, he'd probably have close to 200k right now. So yeah, but some people manage their life differently, and this person's it's now on the older side, the person that hasn't been managing their life correctly. So it's too late for this person. So it's highly unlikely he will change, and it's a sad thing. I mean, he's probably going to end up with like another relative that I know that ended up isolated, alienated, broke, always saying what he was going to do with money. But basically, going back, he ended up not traveling ever. He didn't travel ever. To like on vacation. He was saying, "Oh, I want to travel to Europe like you, Josh." Well, yeah, I mean, I would like eventually, but that didn't came. And now he's saying, "Oh, and once I recover all of my crypto, I'm gonna go." I'm like, dude, he's only putting money in like the small cryptos, which, you know, are, as Ricardo Salinas has called them, shit coins. But pretty much, for the most part, every single person that I've ever met, except 3 people, haven't made money in crypto. Most people that I think the vast majority of people that invest in crypto tend to be the people that are unsophisticated, and if they educate themselves on fiat currency, etc., blockchain, they're the impulsive type, the type of person that doesn't have the right temperament to make large quantities of money long term. They might get lucky once or twice, but that's about it. I have met some people that have made quite a lot of money in crypto, but they were the types to buy and hold, not try to time. But it's all essentially luck. I mean, buying it at that certain price. But this person there's one person that I know that made $100,000 in Australia, and another person whose crypto currently is probably worth about $110,000. I met the one that has $110,000 in Bitcoin. That was like 6 years ago. I met him in Pattaya, Thailand. He was an Indian guy with his own business in India, and he was living in what do you call it, in Pattaya. So he had $110,000, and now I reckon he's probably still in Thailand. He has probably more than that now in crypto, and plus back in the day, not only did he had 2 cryptos that were worth probably around, I don't know, 60,000 or 40,000 or 30,000. I forgot. He also had some cash, so he was doing very well. He was a buy, hold, and that strategy appeared to have been better than this person in my family who decided to just always time the market, thinking he could time the market. So life is a strategy game, and it's evident that because some people are better at it. Some people decide, you know what, I'm going to get into that one. But it's also luck. I mean, what if you decide, like, let's say this one person became a truck driver, and he saved money as a truck driver, and he started his own business as an owner-operator, and he made so much money in the early 2020s, like 2020 to 2022, and then he ended up saving so much money and buying a house, and that house is now worth $500,000, and it's eventually going to appreciate to well over $1 million. Meanwhile, this other person decided to also become an owner-operator, but he decides to do it now. Now is probably not the best time to be a trucker, and let's say he does it for 1.5 years or 2 years, and the type of loads and the contracts he gets, and it makes him so little money, and he is living way above his means, that he's not doing as well as a person who was trucking between 2020 and 2023. Now, some truckers just simply spend way too much money. Some owner-operators said they're basically almost working for meals after spending a lot of their earnings on gas, insurance, and their bills. Or maybe they can't even afford to take out a mortgage because they're just spending so much money. I've heard of some truckers. Okay, so there's this one truck driver. He told me you won't save any money as a truck driver because you spend it on food and you spend it on hotels. And he said he didn't save much. Or no, he told me he didn't save anything. He literally said you won't be saving anything. So this guy, this trucker that I know, he was a trucker for years and years and years. He didn't own his own truck. He worked for a company. So he was broke after decades of being in the trucking industry. Meanwhile, I know this other guy in Bakersfield who was a truck driver for decades, but he had over $1 million saved up. Instead of spending nights in, like every night in a hotel or every other night in a hotel, he decided to spend most of his nights sleeping in the truck, in the cab. And he would always go for like the cheapest hotels. I think if he worked to go in a hotel, and he would prepare a lot of his meals or just eat the cheapest things, and or not just like buy whatever he wanted from the liquor stores, or wait until he was at a truck stop or somewhere that had cheaper options. So these both truckers had a different strategy to life. One is now financially free, retired, have a paid for home, and the other one, he was on government assistance. Life is a strategy game, man.